while we're waiting. Ava, are you with us? Hey,
Hi.
Ava. Max. Is Max with us?
I'm here.
Mackenzie. Hey. Naima. James.
Here.
Oh, James here? Okay. Vince. Hey, Vince. Anne is here. Nayana.
I'm here.
Hello. Theo is here. Elena.
Hello.
Hello, hello. Felix.
Hello.
Where's Felix? Oh, there he is. Duncan. Duncan, are you moving?
I'm here.
You in the process of moving?
Yeah, moving in right now.
Moving in. Oh.
Yeah.
Elva.
Here.
Hey, Elva. Ash.
Here.
Okay. Kendall. Hey, Kendall. Rachel.
Here.
Ruby. And Mickey. And we have Naima. Okay. All right. So, how's everybody doing today? Any issues I need to know about?
No.
Everybody okay with the Canvas business? Okay. I am going to share so we can go over a couple things. So, first of all, I want to tell you about a couple things. Just a couple general announcements. I don't know if you notice this, if this is at the top of your Canvas page, but there is a nice big link here for how to register to vote in case you're not already registered. You all, I believe, are 18 or older, and if you have not registered to vote and you're an American citizen, you absolutely should. Or if you're, I don't know how that works, if you're a legal resident, I'm not sure of the law, but if you have the ability to vote, please make sure you do, okay? A former student of mine actually set up this voter initiative here to enable MICA students to register. A lot of you guys, you know, a lot of MICA students typically have to register out of state ballots or how to figure out how to do this like absentee ballots. And so that's what this website is designed to do. And believe it or not, MICA is actually one of the best colleges nationally in terms of student voter turnout. We have scored extremely high, so don't let us down, okay? Please get in there and register to vote when you can, okay? Second thing I wanted to show you guys is Constitution Day. This is this evening. This is a major event that the college has every year, typically in Falvey Hall, which is our main auditorium. 6:30 to 8 p.m. It's going to be a seminar, or I should say a symposium discussing justice in the vote, Black politics and the transformation of American democracy. It's going to take up issues of like the Electoral College, whether it's still relevant, obstacles to voting registration, and other calls and efforts to mobilize to vote. We have a very nice panel of speakers. Chris Bonner, I'm actually responsible for inviting them all. Chris Bonner, who is a historian at University of Maryland. Nikedra Robinson, who runs Black Girls Vote, a voter registration initiative based in Baltimore City, and Imani Haynes, who is actually a MICA graduate, and she was involved in the March for Black Women in Philadelphia a few years ago, and she's a pretty fiery political activist. And the event is going to be 6:30 to 8. And, you know, so I recommend that you, if you can, join in and take a listen. And there's going to be a Q&A option where you can submit questions, okay, to the moderator, who is going to be Abby Nienhouse, who works at MICA. MICA's staff member, colleague of mine. Let me see here. I'm going to stop share for a second because I trying to see if some people in chat something. Okay. Ava says there's loud construction. Is in Elva's Chinese dramas. Okay. Fuck the electoral college. Well, I know, but it's the system we have. So we got to make it work. I agree with you, Elva. But if you're interested why we have it and whether it's still relevant, take a look at that conference tonight. Chris Bonner wrote a big book on this, on the origins of the Electoral College. For those of you who are not aware, the American president is not elected by a popular vote. Twice in the last 20 years, the victor for the White House did not get the majority vote. We had this crazy electoral system, which actually there were reasons for it. Whether the reasons still pertain is an enduring question. Whether we can change it is another thorny question. So check that out tonight if you can. 6:38, maybe while you're making dinner or cooking dinner or sitting with your grandma. Sit back, tune in, okay? All right, I'm gonna go back here because I wanna share I wanna look at our Canvas site, okay? Bang, here we are. Okay, a couple things. First of all, I put up a handy link here for our address for our all-class meetings going forward. I just got an email from Micah that there's going to be some new security measures for Zoom meetings starting at the end of the month. I'm not exactly clear on what those will be. I'm sure they will be obstacles we can overcome, but we'll deal with them at that point in time. This was our module from last week, Module 2, September 10th. You can see where you posted your answers. And then I recorded our module, our class discussion. I put them up there, okay? By the way, I was generally very pleased with your response to the questions. And in a few cases, some cases I left some comments, pointers for what I would like to see going forward, typically in terms of more detail or the like, or if I didn't feel you were answering the question more directly enough. Please pay attention to the comments, okay? And let me know if you have any questions about them. This is where we are today. I had you all read the Tao Te Ching, parts 1 and 2, and then some reading responses there. I'll take a look at those after class. Next week, Michael Pollan, one of my favorite little essays, Botany of Desire, and then you'll have reading responses from Michael Pollan as well. Michael Pollan is a contemporary writer. He's an American biologist. He's based in Berkeley. And he is very much involved with the way Americans have started to rethink the origins of food over the last 20 years in terms of sustainability and the like. And he wrote a book that was very popular called The Omnivore's Dilemma about 15 years ago. Botany of Desire was an earlier book written more from his vantage point as a biologist. And I just think it's a really interesting book. It's divided into 4 chapters about 4 different species of plants. And it's like a biological and social history of these plants. One chapter is about marijuana and how, how humans, I should say, have transformed that plant to line it up with their desire. Another plant he has a chapter on is the potato and how that has, again, also impacted human society. And I'm going to have you read chapter 1 from that book next week, which is about the apple. And the reason I'm going to have you read about the apple, you'll see it next week, but it has to do with all these ideas about the American frontier in particular, and a mythical figure who is at the center of frontier tales. But it's also a very interesting story of the origins of the apple and what it means and what secrets it holds and how we have changed it dramatically over the centuries to suit our needs and desires. Okay. Students seem to enjoy the essay very much last year, so I hope you will as well. And if you do find it of interest, I recommend you read the whole book, which you can find easily. It's not a long book. The other thing I wanted to go over with you is next week we'll talk about this. It's a thesis statement worksheet I want to go over with you guys because we do need to talk about writing. And your rough draft is going to be due October 1st. I'll remind you about that. There will be no reading that day, but I do want to go over the directions for the paper here, if that's okay. Let me minimize this some more. So, your first written assignment in frameworks this semester would be a critical analysis essay. In a critical analysis essay, you explain or evaluate a work's effectiveness, including what it does well and what it does poorly with respect to its aim or goals. This means you may analyze a work in terms of its essential components, be they style, voice, imagery, plot, narration, argumentation, or perspective. So you will be handing me, you'll be emailing it to me actually, a rough draft on October 1st. Please make sure it's a draft and not an outline. Okay, the more you have done, the more productive my comments can be for you, and the more you will get out of the process. I will review your draft, include comments for rewrite, and return it to you promptly. After you make recommended corrections, the final drafts are going to be due 2 weeks later. Okay, we will have a reading assignment in between. I will be deducting a third of a letter grade for each day that either draft is late. So please get them in on time. Please take advantage of the writing studios to prepare for these papers. This is their website. They have tutors on the ready for you if you need any assistance. And I'm looking for papers about 4 to 6 pages in length, clearly written, with correct grammar and standard formatting. When it comes to clarity, I suggest that you have a proofreader. Even if you don't go to the writing center, see if there's a proofreader who can take a look at your essay, a family member or friend, just to test for clarity, make sure they understand what you're saying. I'm going to go through this and then open up questions, okay? A few points. Develop a strong thesis statement. We'll talk about that next week, what that is, what that looks like. Make sure it is clear and to the point and isn't ambiguous or wishy-washy. Your thesis statement tells your reader what to expect. It's a declarative sentence that states the purpose of your essay, the point you're trying to make, which you'll support or illustrate in subsequent paragraphs. Be sure to cite passages or reference, paraphrase the text, or quote the author in the supporting paragraphs that follow from your thesis. It's important to quote in order to support your arguments, but there is a happy medium. Don't quote too much. And when you do quote, be sure, or reference text, be sure that you tie it in and make clear its relevance to the thesis, okay? For these papers, when you quote, I'm not looking for anything fancy, you may simply include the page numbers in parentheses at the end of the quoted passage and then give it bibliography at the end. For each of the following paper topics, you only need to use a single text. So your bibliography does not need to be fancy. You can simply state the single text you're using, and that will be of interest to me only in case you're using a different edition from the one in class. So not a big deal. And then I have a couple of prompts here. Consider the episode with Bill Jones, self-proclaimed Johnny Appleseed champion and historian in botany of desire. How does Michael Pollan's interactions and dialogue with Jones support, feed into, or prepare his larger argument? How does Jones in his demeanor, speech, and mannerisms come to reflect the problems with Johnny Appleseed lore? So this is about your reading for next week, which is about the American myth of Johnny Appleseed and what it means and says about the frontier. And this is a way to, you would be, in this case, you'd be looking at a character depiction in order to explain what it says, what that depiction does for the essay as a whole, how that helps, how this stylistic feature helps the argument in play. Number 2, this pertains to what we're reading for today. Consider the writing style of the Tao Te Ching. How does a style advance the purpose or aim of the book? This will, of course, require that you articulate the purpose of the book, then draw on supporting evidence, including word choice, metaphor, analogy, phrasing, also the structuring poems, the imagery invoked, and the like. Right, again, look at the stylistic features of the poem. What do they indicate about the purpose? And then I have a prompt about Rousseau for last week. Since his discourse on the origin of inequality is a work of philosophy, you may analyze his method of argumentation, specifically what he ignores or assumes. To be specific, what concerns is Rousseau ignoring or neglecting and laying out his case against prominent human beings? What is he assuming, perhaps wrongly or taking for granted? What does he overlook or undervalue? And then finally, return to the botany of desire. What do you think is Michael Pollan's imagined or desired audience? Who is he trying to address and why? And how can you tell? Does he aim to address biologists, politicians, faith leaders, artists, voters? And then what textual evidence supports your position? All right, I'm going to open up for questions. Anybody have any questions? Does anybody have any questions at this time? You can, of course, think on it and let me know if you have any questions or issues as we go along. You have plenty, we have 2 weeks from now before these drafts are due, so you have plenty of time to plan ahead, okay? Please use that time wisely. All right? Any other issues or questions? Okay, great. So today we're going to talk about the Tao Te Ching, which is actually one of my favorite works of all time. How many of you, I know some of you were talking about before the class, but how many of you have read this book before? Show of hands. Or fingers. Nobody? Can you guys hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Anne, you hadn't read it before?
No, never read it.
Even while Kerr was asking you about it?
I mean, I read it for this class, and I even was talking to my roommates and my boyfriend about it, and they were like telling me everything about it, and I was like, I've never heard of this. Like,
But did Kerr presume you had read it?
No. I don't think he assumed the class read it. I think he was more like having us read this one poem, and then he kind of assumed. No, sorry, he said that he was explaining the rest of the book too a little bit.
I'm going to have words with him. Jumping the gun on me here. Well, great, perfect. I'm actually thrilled if you have not read this book before, and so that this can be a kind of introduction. I've taught this book for several years now. I used to teach a course, when I first got hired at Micah 15 years ago, I used to teach a course on the classics of Asian philosophy, and I always had a section or two on Taoism, and some of the, there are at least 2 major classic works in Taoism, this and another book called The Inner Chapters by Chuang Tzu. And, I just think that it's a fascinating work. Well, let me pause for a second and see what you all thought of it. I mean, does anybody have any impressions they'd like to share? How did it go reading this book?
I was getting a lot of like Buddha, like spiritualism in it. Not really more religion, but just kind of like a being as I was reading it.
Anybody else? How about anybody want to speak to the experience of reading it? Was it hard or easy?
I wasn't a big fan of the style. I don't know. It seemed like a one of my burnout hippie friends was trying to convince me of something,
Whoa. All right. Thank you, Duncan. I love controversial statements. Makes my life worth living. I guess he's moving, right? Everybody, he's frustrated. We know, we've been there. Moving sucks. Anybody else?
Sorry, I didn't hear any of that. If you can just.
Oh, you didn't hear any of that? I was saying I like your controversial statement. I appreciate it. And I was wondering if, because you're moving house, that made you, a little short on nerves, which I totally get. Last time I moved, I said to my wife, no more. We're done fucking moving. We're staying here forever. I don't care. Hate moving. All right. Thank you. Anybody else want to share their experience of reading Tao Te Ching this morning? How'd it read for you? Elva, go for it.
I thought like generally it was kind of confusing, but I think like my favorite parts of the passage is like when he references like terminology that like I feel like you should know but you have no idea what the hell it is. Like when he's talking about like dark enigma integrity and like dark female enigma, I was like, what the fuck is this, man? Like that came out of nowhere. Of course I didn't look it up.
That's okay. Anybody else?
I think it was like I felt like I could understand it if I spent like a long time reading it, but like I did spend a good amount of time reading it, but like to fully understand it, I would have to like spend hours and hours looking at it. That's how it felt for me. I think it's something my dad would like actually. He's always kind of like that philosophical Chinese stuff.
Great, thank you. Anybody else?
I was gonna say I was kind of on the same page as like everyone else. Like I thought it was interesting to read, but it did take me like a few times to like go over it and like read it again just to understand what they were saying, especially when it came down to like that whole dark female enigma thing. I was so confused. I was just like, wait, what does this mean?
Good. Anybody
Yeah,
else?
a lot of it went over my head. And it may have just been because I didn't have like a ton of time to read it. Like, I mean, we had like the whole week, but like I didn't like sit down and stare at this book for hours and like think about every little detail that he said. But like there were some things that I agree with that he said, if I understood them correctly, and there were some things that I didn't really agree with. And I just pulled it up again because I wanted to like, I think it was in like chapter 8, or the last line where it's like, when you never strive, you never go wrong. Like that's like an example of one of the statements I don't really like agree with.
Good. Anybody else?
I really enjoyed it. I thought it was super poetic, and I liked how weird it was. So yeah, especially his like use of like comparing certain Taoist beliefs to like kind of everyday actions or everyday objects. I thought that was pretty cool. So yeah.
Good. Thank you. The translation is always a problem here, okay? I looked at the passage that Felix was mentioning. The translation, my own translation, which is a little book that I have here, it says, only do not contend and you will not go wrong. Your translation used the word strive, and I can see why that's problematic. But the only way to address the shortcomings of the translation, which is always going to be difficult into English, is to understand the piece as a whole. And we have to understand the way in which this author is meaning strive. In the 20th century American sense, yeah, that sounds crappy, right? Don't strive and you'll be fine. You don't want to hear that as a freshman in college. Like, what the fuck are you talking about? I got to strive. I got to, duke it out. That's not exactly what he means. So again, we'll have to put this together. Okay, so here's what we're gonna do. We're gonna dive in here. Okay. The Tao Te Ching is, I think you could argue, is an intentionally mysterious work. That's the intention. Translating it into English just makes for other problems. The edition I got for you guys online is, I thought was actually pretty good when S.E. Hinton is the translator, and he's pretty good. The only issue is I don't notice any footnotes here for the translations. So if you are worried about any of the translations, like if you could decide to go ahead and write about this for your paper and you're worried about the translation like Felix, you can either contact me and I'll tell you what my footnotes say about the translation, or you can find, there are various versions of this online, and you might find one that can break down the translation better if it sounds confusing. So please do, and you can touch base with me. Why is the Tao Te Ching intentionally strange? Well, I'll tell you a little bit about the biography of this piece. So the author, we are told, is a guy by the name of Lao Tzu. At least that is one of the ways, I just put it in the chat. That's at least one of the ways his name is written. I've also seen it written as Lao Tzu. Okay. Lao Tzu lives sometime between the 6th and 4th centuries BCE. Okay. It's not exactly certain. He is reputed to be a historical person, but his historical existence is debated. It is, in many accounts, he is claimed to be a contemporary of Confucius. Is anybody here familiar with Confucius? Elva, you are. Can you tell me, you want to tell anything about Confucius?
I only vaguely remember it from my world history class like 3 years ago, 4 years ago. But Confucius was a guy who wrote who had like several tenets, I think, or whatever it is. Like how do I explain it? It turned into a kind of system that a lot of people in China lived by called Confucianism.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm fuzzy on the rest.
It's okay. It's okay. What I was going to say is that, I have often taught the Tao Te Ching and Taoism, which is the philosophy and or religion that is credited to this work, the Tao Te Ching. I've often taught Taoism as a response to Confucianism. So it is sometimes helpful and valuable to understand that Confucius, who lives around, he lives in the 500s BCE. He writes a pretty extensive rule book for the right kind of behavior, about how people should behave in public, and how they, one of the most interesting things that Confucius writes about is how people should speak, and that they should speak very carefully, and they should show respect. And it's pretty. Critics would point out that his code of behaviors is rather rigid, and Lao Tzu is considered to be one of those critics. And he supposedly engaged in a lengthy debate with Confucius about a very rigid code of behavior. And then he, eventually he decides that he is, in a way, giving up on human civilization. And as an old man, he gets on a water buffalo and he heads west. And he decides he's just going to leave it all behind and go into the wilderness. And before he gets there, at the last gate of the wall, but at the end of the kingdom, a guard persuades him to write down his wisdom, and he produces the Tao Te Ching. That's how the story goes, and then he is gone on his water buffalo, and that's it. The reason I'm telling you the story is because just to give you an idea of the origins of this work. Why we're reading it in this class, well, maybe that'll come out shortly. But I'm not gonna dive into that just yet. But what I wanted you to understand is, I want you to understand that it is, in many ways, it is intended to be cryptic. It is intended to be cryptic. If it is going to be a handbook for living, what kind of handbook is this? How does it want us to think? How does it want us to approach life? How does it want us to view the world we see ourselves in? There's something in the very nature of the way this is written as a poem that indicates that it's going to take a radically different approach. Okay? So I think that's all I'm going to say about that for now. I think what we're going to do is this. I'm going to, I was thinking about doing this in breakout rooms, but I think I'm going to actually not. I think I'm going to do this with the class as a whole, since this book is very new for you, and we'll work our way into this. So the title is the Tao Te Ching. Tao is translated typically as the way. And Te is power. So the title is sometimes translated as the way, and it's power. Okay. But the way is not very indicative. It's pretty open-ended, right? Maybe this question will go nowhere, but what does it suggest to you that is called the way?
It's kind of reflective, at least from like what I picked up from the actual reading. It's kind of like indicative of like you're supposed to just kind of let it happen and not ask too many questions. And there's like, oh, like for me, what I interpreted as the way is just like the kind of like rhythm and like flow of the world. And you just kind of have to let that happen and kind of ride the wave.
Okay. Yeah, the way is that can be understood so many different ways. Oh God, killing myself here. Yeah, Duncan.
Um, I'd say like there's a difference between the way and a way, and how
Yeah,
it's not necessarily a choice, and how everybody, whether you like it or not, falls under this category.
I love it. That's really good. I never even thought about the article there. That's true. Boy, moving has given you insight, Duncan. Keep it up. Anybody else? The way. Isn't that directional? Right? It's not like the place. It's the way. It's going somewhere or you're going somewhere. Or you got to go with it, right? Very strange. So here's what I want to do. There are many ways to skin a cat, so to say. There's many different ways to go about this work. And I'm going to do it, I'm going to do it this way. I want to start by looking at Tao closely. And then we're going to look at Day closely. Power. The way. How is Tao? I have two very important questions that I want to solicit from you all here. And at this point, this is going to require you to flip through the text and give me some words that you pick out, and I'm going to compile them here in the chat. But the first question is, how is Tao described? How is Tao? What kind of traits are assigned to it or qualities? So that's where we're going to start. So just get to it, everybody. Give me some words. What do you say?
It's kind of like from when I was reading, like I'm trying to like look for exact examples, but it's described a lot as kind of like nothingness.
Nothing. Great. That's our beginning, Naima. Are you proud? What's his quality? Nothing. Elva.
Stated to be nameless.
Nameless. Ooh. Kind of hard to write a poem about something that's nameless, don't you think?
Oh yeah, it gets worse. I could put down two more. It's isolate and changeless.
What was the first one?
Isolate, or like isolate, or yeah. I mean, it changed.
Why don't we do it this way? Which poem are you referring to?
Let's see. It is poem 25.
25.
The exact part preceded. It says, "Born before heaven and earth, oh such utter silence, utter emptiness, isolate and changeless."
Isolate. What do you think it mean? What do you think isolate means in this stance?
Let's see. Since it says
You said 35 or 33?
25.
35.
Yeah, did I say 35 by accident? It said 25.
Oh.
I would say isolated isn't used in the usual context. So I mean,
I see.
usually like like on its own, but since it is kind of like it is kind of everything and also nothing, I would say isolate is used as like it is the only one. I think I'd have to reread it and keep thinking.
You're doing super, Elva. What else do you guys see? Other adjectives?
In the first poem, it's called Unnamed Origin to go along with the strange vagueness.
Empty.
Empty. Great. It's nothing and it's empty. Now we're getting somewhere.
It does say a lot about like you have to become this, like you have to become this way. It's not just following it, but like becoming it. So it's uh like unifying yourself with it, kind of.
Okay. This is more of the general prescriptions for us at that point. So I'm going to put that on the back burner for now, Felix.
All right.
You're totally correct, but let's zero in on the Tao first before we talk about the moral prescriptions. What other adjectives do you see assigned to the Tao? How else is it described, everybody? Nothing, nameless, changeless. Everything and nothing. Empty.
Eternal, I would say.
Eternal.
Vast.
Vast.
I think flowing, if I remember.
Flowing. Sounds good.
Impossibly vague.
Impossibly vague. Which number is that, Elva?
That is number 21.
See what my translation says.
It would be the second stanza.
Yeah, mine says vague and intangible. Anybody else?
Invisible.
Invisible. Nice. Who said that? Kendall, do you have a poem number?
13.
13. Super.
Oh, wait. Ooh, my bad. 14.
14. All right, thank you. Anybody else? Next question. What is it? By it, I mean Tao. What do you think this is? What is this thing we've been describing? It is everything and nothing. Unnamed origin, empty eternal. If you were to try and say what it is, what is it? Ava?
Yeah, it's described as having preceded God and any other creators.
What poem is that?
I believe it's the fourth one. Let me check. Yes, 4. It's the last 2 lines.
Precedes God. Yes? That sound good? Others?
I want to point out this nuance. I don't know if it's like really, it's really close to the end.
Mm-hmm.
I'll find it. It is poem 77. It distinguishes the way of heaven, the way of humankind, and then a master of the way. So I'm in the text, I think Lao Tzu, he distinguishes humankind, heaven, and then also the way as, I think, 3 separate categories. Or maybe the way encompasses like both of those and more.
So what's your answer to the question? What is it?
I mean, I did answer it as what is it? Hold on, let me think of the words. I would say like an underlying order to the universe. I believe like that's what I got from it, like a system. Um, but I did get that from a video that I watched like after I read this, so I'm not sure about the accuracy of it.
Thank you. Anybody else?
I described it as like the essence of the universe.
It's not just what everything is, it's also like I thought he would describe it as like a mentality as well. Um like because it's saying like follow this. It's like a thought form kind of too.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is it a spiritual power? Is this God?
I feel like doubt is kind of like what someone wants it to be. It's kind of like this. I wouldn't say it's like this godlike thing, but it's kind of like this, like this faith, like this, like kind of like this thing that people like idolize. They put up on a pedestal. So does that make sense? Does that make any sense?
Wait, it is or isn't something on a pedestal?
It is on a pedestal, but not in a godlike like worship way. It's kind of like a I'll
Sorry.
follow you influencing way.
Good. Okay. Thank you. And that's awesome. This sets up my next question. What does Tao have in common or not with God? So you were right at the edge of that, Anne. Now I'm pushing you over the cliff. Everybody with you. How would you distinguish it from God, or what does it have in common with God? Where's the overlap? Where is it not?
I guess how it's not in common with God is that the way isn't worship. It stated that like in the beginning, I think that it's not something that could be worshipped.
Thank you. It's not something that can be worshipped. Awesome.
The Tao isn't a physical figure as well.
What do you mean?
I mean, God is like this person. This or I like this person
That's
that
different from physical.
yes, physical. People are physically following him, doing what he says, and the Tao isn't that. It's actually completely the opposite.
I think there's something a little bit different there you were hinting at, though, right? It's not that God is physical, but that God is anthropomorphic.
Mm.
Sometimes is thou anthropomorphic?
Mm.
No. So this is not like, how would we say, this is not a personal deity, and by that I mean this is not something that has a no personified will, right? Or mind even. Where is the overlap with God?
I think the
It's
overlap is uh like you follow Tao and you follow God because you want to reach a higher state of being, kind of like becoming one with like the universe and like enlightening yourself and all that.
Good. Somebody else was starting to chime in.
yeah, I was gonna say, like, they're both kind of like higher powers,
Mhm.
but in a way, like, it seems like God is almost governed by the Tao, like everything is.
It's even more foundational, right? Yes. Felix, would you remind me what you said again? I think I may have missed
Oh
it.
yeah, sorry. It's like it's something like both Tao and God are a concept or like mainly just like a concept that you follow. It's like a philosophy and it's a means of like going towards enlightenment.
Oh, I like it. Okay, thank you, Felix. Right. So the point is, So I forget. Maybe Anne said this earlier. I can't remember who said this. It can't be worshipped. Okay, it can't be worshipped, but we're not indifferent to Tao, right? Humans. We're supposed to have. I don't know. Is the word devotional? Maybe that's too strong. But we're supposed to.
It can't be worshipped, but it can be followed.
There, thank you, Felix. That's very good. Yeah, it's something for us to follow. It sets some kind of an example for us. So it has that in common with the divine, right? Um, and there is another point of overlap between the divine and the Tao. What is it? Anybody else? There's something we've at least noted down here that God and the Tao have in common.
Is it like how eternal it is?
Eternal. That's true. Totally. I was noticing here that someone pointed out how it is creative. Well, maybe I didn't write that in the notes. Shit, I thought I had. There's one passage where it says that that Tao is creative, which has led some people, mostly naive Westerners, to think that Tao is equivalent to God, when that is hardly the case. By the way, in the English language, when you want to talk about, if you want to talk about God in less personified terms, you could just say the divine, or you talk about, instead of God, you talk about the Godhead, and the Godhead means a divine force, if you will, that is impersonal, right? It's pretty clear that the Tao Te Ching is not talking about a personal divine here. Not talking about anything personified in the slightest.
I think that for a number of different religions, people, like, based on like their own personal beliefs, they can only see like one or like a few figures of like, these are the godlike, there is nothing else besides these guys, and they are, like, by definition, they are a divine being. And like, personally, I see it's like, it's, those are not the only ones. Like, that is like a species, kind of, like, in the way, like, the way that Tao is described seems like it's part of that species, but not nearly as personified as the other ones.
Good. Really thorny question. Completely unfair of me to ask this of you right now. I probably should have done this before class, but what would you do if I told you you had to draw it?
I wouldn't.
It's probably a good idea. Why
I
not?
I feel like I would just have a blank page, because it's just how, like, there's not really a way to like visually describe it.
Since there's a lot of like the author compares it a lot to like a dark, like, abyssal thing, and it's also like a way, so like literally like a direction, like a path, and maybe not like exactly the same, but like similar to it. I'd probably draw uh like the very vague outline, like a very, very vague outline of like a path leading into like darkness.
Nice. Anybody else have any ideas how you would start that one?
I feel like I would draw just kind of like an environment, probably with some water, and then put a bunch of glitter glue on it, and then cut it out and also present it with its negative.
Ooh.
Or like a Zen garden with like a bridge, maybe like a path.
Away,
Yeah,
right?
the way. Yeah, with the.
The reason I'm asking this question, of course, I was thinking about along the lines of what Felix was saying. In the history of religions across the world, you have, often you have a debate over something called iconoclasm. Putting that in the chat. I don't know if you guys have covered that yet in art history. Does anybody know what iconoclasm is?
iconoclasm isn't it the idea that there shouldn't be religious depictions? So like, or I could be thinking of it incorrect. I could be mixing up the two. It's opposite,
Nope,
but
you
I
nailed it. You got
okay.
it.
Yeah, there we go. Then never mind.
It is. It is the debate in religions about whether God can be or should be depicted. Does anybody know why some religions have objected to this? Does anybody know which religions do uphold iconoclasm?
The Prophet Muhammad is off limits.
Yeah,
I'm not too sure why.
it's okay. Anybody else?
Isn't it in Islam you can't depict any type of living thing, like any animal or any tree? So that lends to a lot of their art being geometric.
That I'm not sure about. I only know the prohibition against depicting God for sure. Judaism also practices iconoclasm, and several sects of Reformed Christianity or Protestant Christianity practice iconoclasm too. Notable exceptions here, that is, religions that are not iconoclasts are Catholics, for example, with their statues of Jesus and Mary all over the place, and the saints oozing blood. But I went to high school at a Quaker high school, and their place of worship is a meeting house, and there was no depictions of anything on the walls, completely blank space. In Judaism and in Islam, you are prohibited from depicting the face of God, and in Judaism, you're prohibited from uttering the name of God, even. So, what is the thing between iconoclasms? Anybody have an idea why iconoclasm is a problem for some religions?
It assumes, first of all, that like the god would look like a normal, like a human on Earth, and then also like it kind of relates to the debate that's happening now of like why is Jesus and like God represented as like old white people?
Good. So it's limiting. Anything else?
I feel like religion is very personal, like based on like it's personal in the sense that the way that you see something may not be the exact same as someone else, like visually or philosophically. So like the way that people see like a divine being will probably be different, like de- depending on people's personal gnosis with it.
Good. Excellent. Well, throughout history, the religions that have clung to iconoclasm or upheld iconoclasm, they've issued a couple different arguments for it. And one of the recurring arguments is that God is beyond any kind of perception or depiction. God is beyond our understanding, and God simply cannot be limited, right, by our definitions and the like. And maybe even whenever we tend to think of God in personal or personalized terms, that is what iconoclasm is rebelling against, right? Saying that, that is not, um, you know, that is not, that is not appropriate, and that is undermining your own understanding of the divine. The reason I'm talking about this is because we get a very extreme form of iconoclasm here in Taoism. The Tao Te Ching is not even willing to say what this Tao is, right? One of the healthy debates you could have about the Tao Te Ching is, does Lao Tzu believe in a God and all? Is Lao Tzu an atheist? And I would submit that that's a completely irrelevant argument when we're coming to talk about him, because the idea of whether he's an atheist or not tends to revolve around this idea of a personalized God or some kind of independent force that has a will that specially impacts humans or involves humans. And we're getting something completely different here, right? As I believe it was Alina pointed out, we're talking about something even more foundational than God itself, okay? Where is Tao?
Yes.
What'd you say?
I said yes.
Wrong. Correct.
Everywhere and nowhere.
That's more right. Tao is a thing that is no thing. That sucks, right? Tao is a thing that is no thing. What do I mean to say? It is something pervasive. It is everywhere and no single place at the same time. Right. It is anterior to, and like it's anterior to nature and also pervades nature. Right. Ava, you were inclined to think of like, I really liked your image. What was it again? It involved glitter, if I remember.
Oh yeah. I kind of joked that I would draw. Oh, I should use the chat. Hold on, there's that.
All right. Well, I think it was a setting of I got this image of a peaceful water, it was like a pond or a lake or something. When I asked you all to draw the Tao, nobody mentioned, none of you said your idea involved a cityscape or a shopping mall or a highway. Oh, there we go. A lake scene with glitter. Nice. Why didn't any of you offer up a cityscape?
Because that's like a man-made thing, and the Tao doesn't seem like it's man-made. It seems like it's completely natural. Something that has existed already. Like it said that it precedes God, it precedes like man-made civilization too.
And the connection to nature.
What was that last point?
I said the connection to nature.
Can you expand? What do you mean?
Like when he like referenced like water.
Oh, I need a complete sentence, Theo.
What do you mean? How like the passage referenced water. And like,
That's evocative. Okay. Right, good. That's evocative. So good. I mean, you know, he seems to be referencing some kind of force or entity that encompasses or precedes human habitation. Is it evicted from New York City? I don't think so. We have to be creative at that point. But it most often comes to light with ideas of nature, as if this is some kind of force that can be best tapped into in nature. On the issue of force, we need to now talk about Tao, about day. Day equals power. And my question for you all at this point is, what is the power of, day is Tao, is the power of the Tao. Day is the power of the Tao. So what is the power of Tao? How is its power described? And then I have another question at that point. Let's talk about the power. How is this entity powerful? What is its power like?
Its power is passive. It's not direct.
Is passive.
It's like
Yeah.
humble, I guess.
Ash?
Humble.
Humble.
It doesn't like brag.
I
don't know.
I hate braggers. No, good. Ash, I love it. It's great. Are you referencing one poem in particular?
I don't remember exactly, but I remember there's a passage where I think it was part of the metaphor of water, but it doesn't. I think it was connecting water with like Tao and stuff like that, and it kind of like described water as like providing yet not, you know, being brash and like braggy about it. It's
Yeah,
just
water doesn't brag,
it
right?
doesn't. It just does. It does.
Water just does.
Poem 8.
Doesn't brag. Kendall.
No, I was following up. I said I think it's poem 8 to where it says, "Lofty nobility is like the water." I mean, it's like water. Water's nobility is to enrich the 10,000 things and yet never strive. It just settles through places, people everywhere loathe. Therefore, it's nearly way.
Which poem was that?
Poem 8.
Yeah, that's one of the best. I love that one. What do you think that means, Kendall?
I think it's just saying that it doesn't forcefully try to help people out. It's just naturally there. So in a way, it's like it flows everywhere, and if it's ever, around where people are, it's naturally there to help out, and not like, oh, how how can I say? Let's say like how religiously, especially like people who are extremely religious, they try to force God onto you, or they try to force their religion. I see it as the saying that Tao isn't like that. It's not something that's going to be forced upon you. It's just something that, a person may naturally gain or understand.
Thank you, Kendall. That's great. Duncan.
It's inherently just.
Are you referring to one poem in particular?
No.
Good. How else is the power of Tao described? How else is it powerful?
I feel like part of its power is in like the consequences of not like following or recognizing or understanding it or whatever. I'm not like looking at it right now, but I remember there was one of the poems where, or maybe it was mentioned in a few, but like it was saying like not following it leads to like calamity or like chaos or something. It also said like those who don't follow it will die young, and those who do live old, or something like that.
Awesome. Thank you, Max. I'm going to put yours in the back burner for just a second because you're leading into my next question. Mackenzie.
I don't remember what poem it was specifically, but I remember that it said, that water was powerful by, what was it? Like it can wound someone non-violently. I do remember that, but I don't remember what poem it was specifically.
Neat. Can wound non-violently. Anybody else?
And I think I remember like the stillness of water can like teach you.
Good. Well, everybody's chomping at the bit to talk about water. We better talk about water. Why is everybody talking about water? You thirsty?
If I'm going to be honest, yes.
Oh, I made Theo drink. So, no, but seriously though, why are you all talking about water? It's an accessible metaphor, Ava says. Good. Why in this case? I asked about it. Well, you all were inclined to bring up water, and not wrongly. Water is very important to the Tao Te Ching. Why?
Okay. Well, to me, water just takes on any image, whether it's contained or free flowing. So same with like the Tao Te Ching, there's no physical, look to it. So for anybody's perception, it can be anything. It can look like anything.
Awesome. Good. Anybody else? Yeah, water, it turns out, I mean, look, when I ask you about the power of Tao, most of you immediately started talking about water. And the reason you started talking about water is because water is actually the most important metaphor for understanding the Tao. And the reason you went to a metaphor is because Tao itself is, we just discussed it, is not a thing, right? So how are you going to talk about this power when it is not a thing? We can only talk about it metaphorically. We can talk about it, and the closest metaphor is water. Why? What is water like? Well, is water powerful? Oh yeah. I don't know if you guys saw, I saw pictures this morning of the hurricane down in Florida, and in Alabama, or I guess that's Mississippi. I can't remember where, down along the panhandle. Cars, almost completely covered in water, right? Water is absolutely powerful, but how does it exert its power? How does water exert its power? You know what I mean?
I was gonna say like it exerts its power with force. I don't know. I don't know how to describe it. Like because like in the poem, I think it was in 78. It talks about it being like um soft and weak and strong and hard and everything like that, which is I guess very true when it comes to water because it is soft, but at the same time it is also hard. Like you can get hurt from it and all that stuff, but it's like all of these things at once. It just depends on nature. But
Thank you. How does water compare to a tornado?
I think it depends on the context. Like it can be far less destructive or much, much more, depending on how it's used.
Well, like a tornado, it's just kind of like it goes through and just kind of like fucks up everything in its path. Water, like, I mean, like, I guess this doesn't really, I don't know, follow like the like hurricane or whatever example you used, but like in nature, like water, like over long periods of time, just by running over like rocks and stuff, it'll like degrade the rocks and kind of break them down. So like, it's kind of like, I don't know.
I love the example, Max, much better than mine. What does that mean for the power of water?
It's kind of gentle and you don't really notice that it's happening, but it is.
There you go.
Also,
Slow and steady, right, Elena?
I I was just gonna say with a tornado, it comes through and causes wreckage and then it's gone. But with a hurricane, it generally moves much slower and it's a lot harder to like dissipate.
Yeah, my metaphor has limitations though, because hurricanes can really fuck you up at the beginning. So I don't really like my example. Max's is much better. Right? Just like you could either have a tornado or rain for 20 years straight. Right? So let's do that example instead. At first you'd be like, oh, rain, no problem. Year 10, you're like, no. Right.
Or it could be like a tsunami compared to a hurricane.
I was going to say tsunami is pretty powerful until you look at images. Like if you look at, I love videos of tsunamis. I have a sick part of me. And they are quite amazing, the way they just overwhelm. It's not like a sudden like explosion. They just push. So what's the point? Water is incredibly powerful, but it is not, and it is, and it is highly destructive. But I'm going to go back to a point that Naima made at the very beginning when I said, what is the power of Tao? How should we describe this power? He says it is passive as opposed to active. It's passive. It crushes by giving. A word that the translation often uses is yields. It's yielding, which doesn't make sense in a way. Yes, water yields, but it doesn't yield for long, right? It always comes right back. And it slowly but surely erodes, right? And I think James pointed out poem 78. I'm going to call your attention to that. That is actually one of the most important poems here. He says on 78, nothing in all beneath heaven is so soft and weak as water, and yet for conquering the hard and strong, nothing succeeds like water. Nothing succeeds like water. And the poem that Kendall read, number 8, is also important because he points out this is the point where he says that water is the life-giving source, and it can also eradicate life, right? It's that duality. Why is he telling us about this? Now we're going to make a switch. Why are we being told about the power of Tao and that water is an apt metaphor for it? Why are we being told this?
I feel like a lot of the poems kind of would talk about like opposites, kind of, and like how, like, I remember one quote, I used it in like my response. It was like there is no like, I don't know. There's a different one. It was like there's the house, but it isn't. It doesn't work without the absence in like where the windows are and where the door is. And so like it kind of talks about how like everything like without one thing and its opposite, you don't really understand the one thing. That kind of makes sense.
Very nice. I like that. I'm going to talk about that more in just a second, but I'm going to ask my question again as Felix puts on his mica hat, getting in the spirit. Why?
It's cold.
It is. Okay. Why is he telling us about the Tao? Why should we know? What does the author, what does Lao Tzu want us to do with this knowledge?
I want to say, I mean, not, well, this is my interpretation of what it is, but since like the Tao is kind of like this selfless, like very, I don't know, this like well-being in the wherever, I would say that doesn't want us to, wait, ask your question one more time. I'm so sorry.
Why does he want to tell us about Tao? Why does he want to tell us about this power that we can see evident in water? Why does he want us to tell us about this?
I think because it's to let it know. I mean, like a lot of people are saying like the adjectives of it is like very cool, calm, and like this like quiet, calm being. But I think they want us to know because like now that we're saying about water and like like talking about the adjectives of water and describing it as like this destructful, no, well, not destruction, but like this powerful being that maybe that they want to know like both the sides and connect them and like that's what I think.
Good. Thank you. You helped me realize how I can sharpen my question. So I'm going to sharpen it. I'm going to focus it one more time. Do we have anything to learn from water? Is that the stupidest question you've ever heard? Are you going to go ask for your tuition money back? Don't. It's actually a really good fucking question. Trust me here. What do you have to learn from water?
What I was going to say prior to you asking the question was that like why he's talking about the Tao and its power is almost like we shouldn't take it for granted almost, or like we should because I remember like someone mentioned earlier that like if you don't follow the Tao then like you would die young or whatever, so that maybe that could be like a reference to like your life is going to be hard and all that stuff.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's just kind of like reminding you that uh the Tao is powerful, and it can give you two sides of itself. It could be soft and easy, or it could be hard and destructive. And yeah. So.
Good. Thank you.
Water is like sorry.
Max, go for it. It's fine.
Okay. But water is like patient, and it has the power to give and take at the same time. And I feel like you can say that really about anything, that if anything has the power to give, then it also has the power to take.
And why is that important for us to understand?
I don't know.
It's okay. It's all right. Think on it, Duncan.
Just what he said about water settling, you know, when it comes to a certain place. I lost my train of thought. I'm sorry.
It's okay.
Yeah, the thing about not necessarily striving for more. You find your valley and settle and become comfortable with who you are and what you've done.
Oh. So you're suggesting there is a lesson in water for us.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah. That's the point. Not the definitive, but a Taoist mantra. If you have to take one teaching out of this book, this is it. Be like water. There you go. Print it out, put it over your bed, tattoo it on your arm. That is the Taoist teaching. Be like water. What does it mean for a human being to be like water? How can you be more water-like? Duncan gave a great idea there. Anybody else?
To be calm, reserved, and not underestimating the power of yourself.
Good.
Water also kind of fits. It takes the shape of it takes the shape of its environment. If you put it in a jar, it takes the shape of the jar. If you put it in, I don't know, a pool, it takes the shape of a pool. You kind of, I don't know, take your environment and kind of adapt to it, I guess.
That's amazing. That's awesome. I love that metaphor. He does talk about that. I forget which poem, right? Water takes the shape wherever it is. How is that useful for you or me? What does that mean for us, you think? Any thoughts?
To be more adaptable to your environment,
Mm-hmm.
like versatility.
When you look at a pool of water, when you look into it, or you look at the surface, what do you see?
Yourself and everything around you.
What's the he does, and he mentions that, right, as well. What's the lesson there for us?
To be transparent.
Good. Anybody else?
To like constantly reflect. Like reflect upon yourself and your
And look at
actions.
the way it reflects, right?
Mm-hmm.
It reflects everything outside, but is still an empty within. Right? Yeah, so at the end of the day, the Tao is a poem about the essence of nature and creation, or whatever you want to call this universe. It's about this essence here, where and how it is ineffable, but we somehow implicitly know it and understand it and see it. Somehow it's invisible but visible at the same time, right? To know its power best, we see it represented in a couple of things. We see that water is a good metaphor for the power of Tao, which will not be denied. It is the most powerful force in the universe, which we hardly even see. Similarly, water exerts power in that way. It fills spaces. It creates spaces. I think Max pointed this out. One of my other favorite passages is a poem where he talks about the value of space. Maybe if Max or anybody, if you can find that poem, I would love it, right? It's like, I forget how he says, like, what's valuable about a cup is not the cup itself, it's the space inside the cup, you know? What's valuable about a wheel is not the wheel itself, but the spokes within the wheel. It's the emptiness and the space in things that is valuable. Anybody know which poem that is? All right, well, give me a heads up if you find it. About the value of space, there is a very famous, one of my favorite Taoist stories, if you will. I guess maybe, I don't know if it's like a fable. I think it's like a fable, you know? It's actually told by Chuang Tzu, who was a follower of Lao Tzu. And Chuang Tzu talks about this butcher, the best butcher in the land. And he would, you could give him an ox and he would chop this thing up in a matter of seconds, and there'd be hardly any blood and hardly any effort on his part. And some guy is watching this master butcher pull apart this ox, and he says to him, and the guy says to him, oh, thank you, Elva. And I see Duncan has it too. I'll get there in a second. And the guy says to the butcher, how are you able to do this so good? How are you able to do this so well? Oh, and the other point is, he grabs the knife of the butcher who's been butchering for years, and he says, what's up with your cleaver? It's as sharp as the day you first made it. And the butcher says, I've never sharpened this thing. And in so many words, the guy says, what the hell? And the butcher puts down his cleaver and says, I find the space in things. I find the space between the joints, and I insert my cleaver in those spaces and I pull it apart. And it's the space in things that's valuable, right? That's what it means to be passively forceful. To be actively forceful is to cut a chicken the way that I cut a chicken. Sorry to be graphic for everybody, but when I make a roast chicken for the kids and they're like, I want a wing, I want a leg, I butcher that thing. And I mean that in the bad sense. I start sawing and hacking, and like chicken goes flying everywhere. I have no idea how to find the space in things. If I could find the space in that chicken, I'd like pry it apart in 3 seconds. And it'd be like, wow, Dad's like a Zen monk. That's awesome. But I'm not. I'm actively forceful. I will hack and saw. But if I were passively forceful, I'd pull it apart. Let's take a look at these 2 poems that Elva calls our attention to. Poem number 11. Oh, yeah. 30 spokes gathered at each hub. Absence makes the cart work. In my translation, emptiness or space. A storage jar fashioned out of clay. Absence makes the jar work. Doors and windows cut in a house. Absence makes the house work. Presence gives things their value, but absence makes them work. We undervalue the emptiness. We undervalue the space. We overvalue the material, the substance. Max earlier was referencing one of the most important doctrines of Taoism that you all probably know, which is called the yin and the yang, right? Yang. I'm sorry, typo on my part. The yang, you guys know what that looks like. You could draw, right? It's a circle. One half is black and the other half is white, but there's a white dot in one part and a black dot in the other. You guys all familiar with that? The yin and the yang. What does the yin and the yang represent?
To coexist with one another. Right.
Okay.
I think it also represents the white being quote good and the black being like quote bad, and the fact that there is bad in good with the single dot, and there's also good and bad also in the other dot.
Which means what?
It means everything is balanced in the sense that there is a constant duality. There is constantly the opposite within its opposite.
Good. Yeah. And opposites necessarily form part of a whole. How can you have one opposite without the other, right? Can you have happiness without sadness? Right? The passage that Duncan referenced, and he pointed out to me, this is not exactly about absence. That's okay. It's about the yin and the yang. This is 26. He says, the poem says, heavy is the root of light and tranquil the ruler of reckless, right? You will find these adjectives necessarily together. And can you really understand and appreciate tranquility without recklessness? And can you really appreciate the heavy without the light? You can't really have one without the other. And similar to poem 11, you cannot have space. You cannot have a wall without the space, right? And it is the space that makes the wall functional. It is the wall that gives, it's the space that gives the wall the purpose that it would not have otherwise. Okay? I'm gonna touch on a couple other passages. I know we're just about out of time here, but I'm gonna pause for a second, see if anybody has any questions. Right, so at the end of the day, oh my God, I just realized, stupid me, I'm writing to Duncan personally, and I meant to write to you all. Yin. Yeah, I'll figure this chat out, right? There you go. That's the, and the yin and the yang, that is articulated in poem. Sorry, everybody. Number 2 already. Okay. Let me fish around here and see if anybody knows. There's another useful metaphor for understanding power. Anybody know what other metaphor Lao Tzu mentions? Be like water. Yes, good one. What else? Be like what? Anybody know? Another metaphor we could emulate? Ah, your translation has foiled me. Poem number 55 should instruct you to be like a baby. But this stupid translator says, everybody's integrity is abundance and you're like a vibrant child. Ugh, I don't like that. Babies are much better. Yeah. My number 55 says, be like a baby. Just says it right out. Why should you be like a baby? Have you ever met a baby? What's a baby like?
They don't know anything and they just go with whatever the hell they are introduced with. They're just like, oh yeah, this is what's happening.
They're open to anything. I like it. Non-judgmental. Actually, why don't we read number 55? Your translation, I'm not crazy about, but it's okay, it'll do. Embody, if you would alternate 55, please. Embody integrity's abundance, and you are like a vibrant child. Read, baby, you're like a baby. Hornets and vipers can't bite. Savage beasts can't maul, and fierce birds can't claw. Bones supple and muscles tender, but still gripping firmly. Knowing nothing of male and female mingling and yet aroused, not what you think. This is the utmost essence. Wailing all day without getting hoarse. This is the utmost harmony. I'll say one thing. I may be the only parent in this room here, in this group here. I'm presuming I am. Babies, they can fucking wail. And they don't get hoarse. What the fuck is up with that? Anybody want to venture a guess?
They just have a lot to say, but also they're not saying anything.
That's right. They don't have anything to say. They have a lot and nothing to say. There's something else going on with a baby, though. Why is a baby able to wail and not get hoarse?
Sorry, can you repeat that?
Why is a baby able to wail and not get hoarse?
Did you say not get horsed? Like
Well,
horse?
yeah, that's what the poem says, line 55. Yeah. Wailing all day without getting hoarse, right? The baby doesn't lose his voice.
Isn't it just like new vocal cords?
Baby's brand spanking new.
Nice. Got a set of pipes in there, you know.
Nice try. It has to do with the muscles being supple, which they said up above.
I'm gonna take a guess. Is it because, okay, like vocal cords are like flaps, right? Like they're like multiple flaps.
You guys are getting so scientific here. All right.
Okay. So is it because like their vocal cords are so loose that the vibrations from their like yelling doesn't like hurt it or damage it? It just kind of goes with. That's my only guess. Really.
You're getting close. Any singers in the house?
My sister is one. I was just gonna say, I don't know, would that make sense with the high pitches? Because like then that's even more like your vocal cords are tighter when you're doing higher frequencies. So I feel like it would hurt more to do higher pitches.
It actually has to do with breathing. Next time you're around a baby, pay attention to the baby's posture. Baby's got a big old belly, right? Since we're not in the classroom, I can't do this appropriate for you, but like a baby is like, like babies, normally growing up, we're told like stand up straight, right? Put your shoulders back. Baby, belly out, If you look at a baby, the arms, they're kind of like bent a little bit. Legs kind of bent inwards, right? Babies are incredibly flexible. I wouldn't recommend it. If you do drop a baby, their muscles are supple. I'm not going to say I dropped a baby here since this is recorded. I don't want to get in trouble. My babies are all great. They're all full grown. But I will say this. Why are babies important here? They display passive strength. They are surprisingly strong and resistant. Why are they able to scream for so long? Because they actually breathe in the perfect way. So I was a singer many years ago, and my singing coach told me it was always about extending your diaphragm. And the only way I can explain this for you is you want to see how a singer should sing after class, go on YouTube and Google Luciano Pavarotti and watch him sing. And he expands his body immensely when he sings, and he makes it look so easy. He's often paired with other singers who never make it look as easy as him. And I like to think that a baby is kind of like Pavarotti, right? Baby just expands freely. The baby hasn't yet been told to stand up straight and be rigid, and right? The baby just lets it all hang out, right? And by letting it all hang out, that baby just expands and wails forever. That's it. Lets it go, right? Until we get that sucker in school and it all goes downhill from there in a way. A little bit of a little bit of Rousseau critique here, right? That civilization undoes the power that we are naturally given, right? And that a baby displays instinctively. But again, the larger lesson is there is power in giving. There is power in yielding. There is power in making space and making room.
I read somewhere that when babies are born, they're like crying because well, they just got born, so they need oxygen and stuff. But I didn't know if that had anything to do with it.
No, but I'll tell you, well, they can wail at that point for sure. That's a fact. But one thing that kind of did surprise me and freak me out when my children were born is when you're born as a baby, your skull is not fully formed, right? They're called fontanelles. And the parts of your skull, they, as a baby is born, the skull can take a certain shape and then is reshaped as the baby grows older, only in a matter of days. But the point is that those fontanelles in the brain, in the head, you can see them, being fragile and misshapen for a long, long period of time. It's pretty freaky. But again, the Taoist point is that this is evidence of the inherent flexibility of the child, of the baby, and we should all be flexible in a similar way. All right, we are out of time here, so let me just tie this together. This is I'll say more about this next week, but this is a radically different approach to looking at nature from what we saw with Rousseau, right? Rousseau sees a completely different kind of inspiration in nature, imaginary, you might say. I mean, there are similarities, of course. The difference is, the most obvious difference is that Lao Tzu is not going to give us a very detailed account of nature, right? This is evocative, it's poetic, it's metaphorical. But there is a kind of, there is a personal lesson in this, right? Early philosophy in the West was about therapy, right? As Socrates says, philosophy is about happiness. And so philosophy tells you how to live the most fruitful way. And in that sense, the Tao Te Ching is an exemplary piece of philosophy, because what he does here is he tells us about nature in such a way that he wants us to emulate its best parts. And there's not going to be too much instruction there, because you'll notice, right? There's value in emptiness. There's value in space. He's not going to fill our minds with images, ideas, instructions. We must approach this in a way that we are also empty in order to transmit this, in order to digest this, right? So if you didn't really get it, if you didn't really understand everything that's going on in Tao Te Ching, then that is exactly the way it's supposed to be. You're not supposed to. There has to be space. There has to be room there. Okay. Any other questions or comments? Anybody got anything? Good. You're all empty. What's that, Naima?
I was gonna ask if you're a good singer.
I'm terrible. I'm awful. I'm fucking awful. Because I never got the breathing thing down. Luckily, there's no videos of me singing online, unless my mother put it out there. I'll kill her. But no, I wasn't that good. My daughter is much better. She likes
What's your range? Like tenor?
I think I was like a baritone. I was one of the Jets in West Side Story. That's my claim to fame. I got
Ooh.
that far. And that's about it.
Wait, sorry, can you repeat that? I didn't hear it.
I said I was one of the Jets in West Side Story. You know the West Side
Jets?
Story?
Like you dressed up as a plane?
No, it's one of the gangs. All right, now I'm gonna ask for it. When you're a jet all the way from your first cigarette to your last dying day. Come on now. Don't you know West Side Story? Get on that shit.
It was like one of the first musicals, I think.
First music, well, from the 1950s, Leonard Bernstein. It's great.
One of the more popular ones, like one of the ones that like gained traction. Wasn't it like one of the first ones to be like on video?
The movie version is exceptional with Natalie Wood.
Yeah.
It's truly,
that one.
That was one of the first movies I ever saw. I saw it in a theater in Paris. I was 10 years old. You know, it's one of the experiences you'll never forget. They were going to redo it this last spring. There was going to be a brand new production of West Side Story, completely redone and rethought.
It was Steven Spielberg.
This is a tangent that nobody here expected me to go on, and I'll just stop very quickly. But the original gangs, it was supposed to be a white gang and a Puerto Rican gang, like a Polish gang, Puerto Rican. Now their gangs have been rethought, multicultural. They're gay and straight and transgender. And this was supposed to run out. This was going to be the brand new version rolled out in March. Bang, COVID. Never happened. So, but anyway.
There was the Broadway revival, though. That was really
there have been many. And the one that was coming was supposed to be the most like revolutionary.
Did not make it to, well, cause, okay, so I think I might have seen it in previews, but it was like on Broadway.
It got that.
Like it actually, yeah.
Wait, you performed in that? Isn't that like cool?
Is it cool? At the time, I thought it was. I was exactly your age, guys. I was 20 years old, or 19.
Like, you performed in the original?
No, God, no. It was a local production. The original's from the 1950s.
Okay, I don't know that much about West Side Story.
You should watch it. But, I mean, what I said about singing, I think is right. You know, like the most powerful singers are the ones who put the least effort in. I mean, like with the right technique, right? And Pavarotti, he wails like a baby. And Pavarotti used to be in a production, before he died about 15 years ago, he was in a tour. They were called the Three Tenors. It was him, it was Placido Domingo, and a third guy, I think Casillas. And you got to see these guys together because Placido Domingo, you could see him physically straining to hit the high notes. Pavarotti, not a fucking problem. He just expanded his belly and his diaphragm, hit it like it was nothing. You know, it is the power of Tao. It really is. You know, he is exerting his power by being passive, by giving. One last note, just to illustrate. I don't know if anybody's familiar with Tai Chi. This is the martial art form that is supposedly inspired by Taoism. And Tai Chi, and Elva, is your grandmother doing it behind? She was exercising earlier.
She does it in the park in the morning, actually, at like 5 in the morning.
There you go. Well, you have someone to talk about Taoism with. Tai Chi, for those of you who don't know, is it's a very slow and meditative martial art form where I learned it about 20 years ago, and I forget the forms, but you will see, like oftentimes in urban places, you'll see in the park, you'll see them going through the forms in about this rhythm. And yeah, I learned it for about a year, and I didn't even know it was a martial art. I went into it thinking this is meditation. And the guy who taught me, I went to school in Boston. He was an MIT engineer who gave up engineering to teach Tai Chi. And he pointed out that it is a martial art form, but it's a martial art form that operates in the manner of giving. You give, right? So Tai Chi is very slow. You go through the forms, but it can be sped up. And if it is sped up, it is the kind of martial art that if someone attacks you, you can, what's the word, like rebuff them or turn them away, right? So you exert your force passively and you don't attack. So it is a Taoist martial arts, basically. There we go. You learned a lot about me today, West Side Story and Tai Chi. Are you happy? I'm not supposed to talk about myself. I'm supposed to be like, we're all supposed to be like water, right? Just reflect our evil plan. Okay, Ava, you with your construction next door. All right, everybody. I'm good if you are. Okay. So I'll let you all go now. I'll stick around if anybody wants to chat about anything. Otherwise, I'll see you next week. Okay. Peace. Take care. Bye. Be good. Keep healthy.
Wait, was there any homework?
Well, you have the reading responses for the Tao Te Ching today.
Okay, that's what I thought.
And then
Okay.
for next week, you read the Michael Pollan piece and you answer those questions.
Oh, okay, cool. Thank you.
Sure. See ya. Vince? Hello, Vince. Vince, you want to talk? All right, email me if you need me. Bye.